I'll just do a quick welcome to the November 2nd Static Site Editor Engineering weekly call, and I'll turn it over to Darva.
All right, just congratulations on making progress on the new architecture proposal. And I will start off with an intro. I've met most of you. I don't think I've met you, Susan. Nice to meet you. I will be the acting EM for just a few weeks. So we will all be transitioning to a new EM in the next few weeks. The next item, I just wanted everyone to write their out of office. The reason why I wanted this in particular was obviously for sprint planning reasons, but this month is the performance review month, and discussions will be happening, and EMs will be speaking with you all, and have to have all that done by November 24th. So this lets me know when to schedule those conversations. All right, if there's no other general items, I will move on to Nav and Settings. I had a few questions about the re-architecture proposal. I was wondering if everyone had an opportunity to look at it. I saw that it was mentioned. Okay, and when you have proposals like these, how do you usually proceed? Is there an epic? It sounded like, Eric, that there was an epic and issues. Who breaks those out and who weights them? How do you all work?
So the link in the document is the epic, which I added the full description in at the end of last week. And so I think we would circulate this for feedback from the technical side, and then I'll circulate it around the product team as well, just to keep everybody in the loop. I actually don't think we've ever done anything of this kind of scope and as thorough a proposal. When we first decided on the architecture for our MVC, it was made not more hastily, but with less impact to the rest of the architecture in the company, so we could move a little bit faster in general. So I actually don't know what kind of timeline we should be looking at for approvals, or what the next steps would be. As far as scheduling out the work, though, I think we would work, the engineers at this point would probably be working on breaking these out into tasks. There's in the epic a high level sense of what iteration steps we might take over the next milestones when we start implementing this, but I'd be looking at the engineering team pretty heavily for next steps there.
Okay, so I was trying to get a feel for how we usually do it. So I guess my first question is, it's a proposal. Do we need to break it out into issues before it can be approved? Or do we have to wait for some approval first before we do that?
That's a good question too. I would imagine, at least from the product side, that I'd want to get sign off from the director, from my director at least, Eric Brinkman, but he's been aware of this as it goes along. I don't imagine that's going to take long for him to sign off. We probably would want to get Tim's approval before we move forward too fast on the architecture from the engineering side. But I definitely want to leave time for feedback from groups like the editor and maybe knowledge, as well as maybe source code for how it might affect the merge request views, and if we were to load this into the description fields for merge requests, for example.
So
we have a technical issue that describes the architecture proposal more from an engineering point of view. So the idea is that, besides adding to what Eric said, we are going to wrap up that issue. So we are going to wrap up the work that I'm doing and creating a proof of concept. We want to share that with engineers in the Create Editor team, also other engineers that work with UI components and have expertise in that area.
Okay, so in terms of next steps, what would you say they will be?
Sharing this issue with the engineers, receiving feedback, and changing the proposal accordingly to the feedback that we receive. After that, we can get the some level of approval, as Eric said, from a directing level, and then we can start creating the planning issues. And after that, we can start executing.
So this issue is a summary, but there's been a lot of very in-depth technical exploration on other issues that Enrique and the rest of the team have done over the past several weeks. And I would think that the answers to any technical questions that remain, which are mainly around, acceptance of these choices of directions are found in there, or at least, that's should answer most of them. So there's been a ton of technical exploration, and we've been thinking about all of the questions that the wider team might potentially ask about the plans for this and incorporating the product.
I mean, I know we're trying to do everything async. Do you all think it would be valuable to find a time slot to just have an open office hours in case anybody wants to come and discuss? We can find a time for that maybe next week or something. Once we can circulate it, and then just make ourselves available for a synchronous conversation if we want, before we put a bow on it.
That's a great idea.
Okay, I'll create that, and we'll find a way to communicate that effectively.
I think part of the problem here is we're not quite sure of like the scope and the plans, and like we think it would be great to include this everywhere in the product, but that's not necessarily a hard decision yet. Is that a fair assessment, you think, Eric?
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, I think what we're doing is proposing a way that those who are interested in using it would have access to it, but it's not, as it says in the proposal, it's not a drop-in, like we're solving this for everybody else. So there will be investment in other groups' time to adopt it. So I'd like to take their feedback into consideration so that we can make that easier for them in the future. But I don't think we're necessarily looking for like the knowledge group's approval on this. We're just, we want to hear their take on whether or not it'd be useful for them.
Okay, so Eric, it sounds like you're going to schedule a meeting, and Enrique, you're going to share the issue with the knowledge editor and source code teams?
That's right.
Okay. Eric, I do have a question about on the product side. So at what point are you going to Eric Brinkman after maybe the engineers have their conversations? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've been filling him in along the way. He knows our goals and roughly what the architecture looks like. I've brought it to the dev team PMs already at a high level. So I'll probably use our weekly call this week to share the link to the epic and get more asynchronous feedback. And then I'll invite them to this office hours as well.
Okay, and I'll check and see if Tim has already been informed or not by John.
I know from talking with Eric that he knows about it at a high level. I don't know if he's like read the architectural proposal.
Okay. All right, and those were the two items that a few items I had. And then in the doc, I just put any updates because I didn't know the format you all usually have. So I guess Vasily, async update on disabling items in left nav. I don't know if he wrote that or if someone was asking him that question.
Sorry, I didn't pre-pen my name. I wrote that just to see if we could, he's out today and for the next few days. So the settings and nav related work he was doing was on disabling items in the left nav if you don't use that feature. And I just was curious if he had an update. I know he was working on one who had some MRs open. So I'll dig into the issues and see if I can answer my own question. But if he can post in the agenda or in Slack some updates when he's able. But we can move on to the next one, which is Chad, you were working on and providing a lot of information on the frequently used projects and groups in the menu and using cloud, cloud storage instead of local storage. So to summarize the feedback on the issue, it's not as straightforward as we would hope, as nothing ever is. And it could introduce some performance issues on those pages. Michael has a really good proposal in the issue, which I realized I didn't link.
I can grab it.
Thanks. Yeah. I just found it, but if you don't have it on hand.
Go ahead.
But anyway, to summarize Michael's proposal, we would actually just like to hold on implementing this exact change, but we have 2 or 3 other smaller things we think could be achievable and valuable in relation to this. The first being just make sure this is instrumented so we know how much people rely on these links in the nav in general, and then building a dashboard to take away. Oh, it looks like he did get around to creating a few issues. So there on the very last comment, I'll put a link to the exact. Oops, I messed up your typing.
All right. There.
Yeah. So his latest comment there, at the bottom of the issue, we have a small iteration to improve the empty state and promote more searching. This is if you don't have any data in your local storage, the menu feels a little like empty, and that is feedback that was found during research. So improving that, as well as making sure we're instrumenting so that we can understand how people use the frequently visited links. And then there's a secondary, I thought he had an experiment he'd like to run around bringing recently viewed into the homepage, and that wouldn't actually be something we would try and get done this milestone. Probably take that and get some feedback from other groups as well, because technically it's not part of the nav, although it's related to what we're trying to solve. So yeah, those 3 issues that were created. I think my real question here for Chad is, can we just take a look at the analytics on those menus and the empty state in 13.6 instead of implementing the cloud storage?
Sure. I'll learn how to do that. Never done it before.
Well, that's good. And I guess while I'm talking, I'll jump into the static site editor and voiceover Jacques update for the static site editor feature. He's working on uploading images, and it looks like he's got on his plate this week the displaying images with relative paths, sort of a related issue we thought might be solved entirely by it, but it looks like he's going to use some of the config work that you did, Chad, to build out the base path and show relative paths there. This
yeah, we knew
mounts,
that would be required.
Right? Yeah. Yep. So the foresight is paying off in that. I think he said it should still be on track for 13.6. And the next one's on Derek.
Yeah, as mentioned previously, my webcam's kind of borked right now, but I'm here. Last week helped Monica automate a bunch of handbook links, and then also had the MR template in the static site editor set, and that should land today. And then for this week, I'm just going to do the second one, which actually ties everything together. We didn't actually have the endpoint we needed, so that's basically why that was required. And then with respect to everything else is on my plate is just a bunch of small kind of priority 3 issues to kind of finish everything off. So that's it for me.
Did you add redirects for all of those? I'm sure we did.
Redirects for
all of those links you updated?
I'm not understanding. They totally changed what the links were.
Okay, I was wondering if they were in the handbook.
Oh, they are, yeah.
Yeah, so we should probably add them to the redirects if the actual paths and not just the anchors changed.
So yeah, we can take this offline. But basically my understanding was they were all anchor links, and that was the reason there weren't redirects set up to begin with. So, but yeah, if there's something else that needs to be done, we can definitely ping me in that issue.
Sure, we take it offline. I think that if the path change, we could still get a redirect even if we can't get the specific anchor.
Okay, cool.
All right, I guess I'll go ahead and verbalize Enrique's. Last week, we documented the WYSIWYG architecture proposal in this issue. This week, he plans to expand the documentation to cover instrumentation concerns, and he'll update the proof of concept to make some of the more abstract concepts in the architecture docs easier to understand. So I guess, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, you're here. I'm sorry. I didn't see
No worries. So, well, by the way, thank you, Laura. But yeah, basically that. Last week, when I met with Eric, we discussed how instrumentation is a very important concern for him. So I didn't cover that topic in the architecture, but I want to make to work on it before presenting the proposal to other engineers, and really to make clear how we are gonna include that within the architecture. And also, we are gonna have, I want to cover more about testing, because we are gonna have some coupling points with Prospero and TipTap, and testing will be the best tool that we're going to have to control those coupling points and control how we are dealing with those dependencies. That if we get a dependency upgrade, we are not going to have a broken editor without us knowing. And about the proof of concept, so we created a proof of concept when we were evaluating the editor the editor platform that we were going to choose to implement the WYSIWYG editor. So I taking that same proof of concept and making some updates because it was implemented with a different Markdown parser. I want to use the Markdown parser that we are proposing in the issue. So I'm gonna work on that, and after that, I'm gonna start sharing with the source code team and the knowledge team and the editor teams.
I'm real excited to get everybody's feedback. I hope everybody else gets as excited as I am and we are about this architecture. I think it's it could be really, really valuable to a lot of different people. Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking through it as I was writing up that epic description last week, and just the more I look at it, the more I write it down, the more exciting it is. So should be an interesting week. We don't have much going on in the handbook, but I did just drop this in. Chad, I think you had mentioned that you might spike on getting Frontman started. I'm not sure if you had a chance to. It's okay if you didn't. We don't have any like prioritized work on that right now, I don't think, but just wondering if you had any updates on that.
So what I did is just refresh and review on what it would entail, and the summary is there's nothing really difficult about it, but there's a lot of little things. The biggest one is we should just get all of the asset image, style sheet, and JavaScript processing not handled by middleman anymore and switched over to Webpack. So the growth marketing team and Lauren already have an epic that covers all of that, and they've done the first little part of that, which is the style sheet handling. So really it's just kind of parked, and once we're all in Webpack, maybe we can revisit that. And related to that, the handbook part of the monorepo site build was the longest running build of all of the things, and it was sort of the bottleneck. And so I went ahead and split that into 2 parallel partial builds, which should have cut about 4.5 minutes off of the overall pipeline time. I'm still waiting for all of the metrics to update, but that's what I'm expecting it to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And please share when you validate that, and I'll circulate it widely, because
There's
that's
coincidentally another bug that just showed up. I was going to check it yesterday, but all of the pipeline times are showing like 0 to 2 seconds. So there's like a completely unrelated bug. So I can't actually see how long it
great.
takes.
Let's just count that as a win then, and and wrap it up.
And even on the product, I reduced all the builds to 0. It was such a great change.
That's great. But yeah, thanks for continuing to focus on the build times, the pipeline times. If they are dropping by 4 or 5 minutes, that's going to be huge. And once we see that in the data, we should definitely celebrate it.
Right. And the other side of that is I don't really think there's any other low-hanging fruit, at least on the handbook side, other than probably converting a front man and whatever that buys us, or going to our own repo and just getting out of the 6 gig repo that's so slow to clone.
Well, I think that's great. Honestly, we won't have much time to spend focusing on it with the Nav and Settings stuff anyway, so this is a great way to wrap up the work. I think this would, if the 4 or 5 minute drop gets in there, we'll be under 10 minutes for our build times. I'm pretty sure. So
or right around, yep.
Or right around, which was our goal from the beginning of the year. So I think that's fantastic. I know we're a couple minutes over. I actually, for docs, Vasily was working on the air gapped improvements, the offline docs stuff. So I don't have an update from him today, but we can follow up with that async. That's definitely his priority for 13.6. And the only other product thing on the agenda, Darva, I see you linked to that video that Sid recorded about his feedback on the settings and whether we should split them up from a global settings to put them inside each individual feature. I think that is a strategy we've considered. I'll leave the more in-depth conversation for when Michael's online this evening, my time, for the design and UX research weekly call. But the summary is we're not actively planning that particular tactic for anytime soon, but we are using that a similar approach in some solution validation. So he's working on some ideas that are in a similar vein, and we'll be getting those validated before planning on any particular milestone.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. But that settings work in particular, the problem of discoverability and access is like the #1 priority, I believe, on the settings epic. So it's not likely to be the most immediate iterative change. We have a little work to do, but it is probably going to be the more meaningful work that we do in 2-3 milestones from now, if I had to guess.
Okay, sounds good.
And I did post that video to Slack as well in the Nav and Settings room, which I realized I'm pretty sure I added you all to, but we'll make sure that you're all in there. Just when I saw it recorded. Yeah, Sid had a great point, which is it's hard to access those settings, and the mapping in a lot of cases is 1-to-1. So really the gist of the feedback is being able to access settings in the context of the feature that you're using is likely a more effective way than having to go back out to your settings every time you need to change something. And I think that wraps it up on the agenda, at least. I'll be logging on later today for the design, product, and UX research call, but unless there's anything else, I can stop the recording.
That's all for me.
Thanks, everyone.